we welcome you, particularly on a cool spring night. Welcome you to this location. If you have not been here before, you are at the historic Harbour Center building, and Simon Fraser University has been here for many years, so we are very much in the process of engaging the community. Also, tonight we're very happy to co-sponsor this event with our colleagues at the Pacific Climate Institute, Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions. I try and be correct, but now I find that the name is right there in front of us. So we're very happy, and sincerely very happy to be working together with them. We will be doing more of this joint event this year. I think that it will help to further engage the communities that we are hoping to serve. So welcome. Nastanza is the Simon Fraser chapter president of this group, PICS. So please give her a big welcome. Now, the topics tonight on food system. It may surprise some of you that, hey, what a Greentech organization is interested in food system? Well, the answer is a lot. I want to cite two papers that were some of the inspiration I got in reading those. The first one is Professor John Beddington. John Beddington is the chief scientist of the United Kingdom. And he gave a talk, more than 2 years ago, to a big conference in UK. And he mentioned, along with others actually, about this coming perfect storm. The coming perfect storm meaning, and we hope that it will never happen, but unfortunately, all signs are pointing towards it. And that is a shortage of the three key areas: energy, water, and food. And they're all related. So that gives us the inspiration to say, hey, we need to reach out beyond our own field of interest to talk to others and be able to share some ideas and insights. And tonight, we will have some experts here sitting in front of me, and I'm looking forward to hear their wisdom and insight. The second report, which is also well worth reading, it came out late last year from the United Nations after surveying a lot of experts in the field all across the globe, and it's called the Great Green Technological Transformation. It talks about growth and sustainability are not in conflict. They should be complementary and they should be supportive. So hopefully what we're trying to do in this year from Greentech Exchange is to reach out beyond our community and to build bridges with the traditional industry. In February this year, we had reached out to the mining industry, very successful, and we'll continue to build on that. Last month, we reached out to the building industry, construction, and that's another important topic. This month, we are here with some experts in the food system. And next month, I'm going to give you a preview. We will be talking about the district community energy system. And we will be co-sponsoring it with the Women in Energy group. Very proud to be associated with and be able to present you that topic. So, without further ado, I will introduce my friend and moderator for tonight, Mr. Brian Buggy. introduce Brian and give a little bit of background of Brian, which will take about 2 hours, but I'll try and condense it into two minutes. And then Brian will then introduce the individual panelists. Brian we're very pleased to welcome him back to Canada. He is a Canadian. He obtained his bachelor degree in University of Victoria and also an MBA degree from our big sister organization campus in Point Grey, the University of British Columbia. Very prestigious organizations. And Brian now has taken up the post over the last 2 years now, is it, Brian? As the Director of Economic and Business Development at the Vancouver City Economic Development Commission. Now, Brian's specific initiatives is to lead and guide some of the major projects relating to the city's Green City Plan. As you may have heard from the mayor of Vancouver and other senior officials, there's a Green City Plan in place. And Brian is a major principal in that group to promote and to carry out some of those activities. Brian is very passionate about having a green and clean city, and we are very lucky to have him back. He used to work for IBM in the States for many years. So talking about brain drain, now we are getting brain gain. So please welcome me to welcome Mr. Brian Buggy.
Does this work? So welcome to the Greentech Exchange, the monthly event. I just want to get a sense of who we're speaking to. So a quick show of hands. How many people here are sort of on the technology side of the equation with the local food? Just a show of hands. Okay, and how many are more, say, local food or agriculture, urban agriculture in general? Okay, so who are all the rest of the people here? Any confessions? Sorry?
People who wondered if there were other categories.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to just introduce the Vancouver Economic Commission very briefly, and then we'll get right into our show. Which arrow is it? This one? Yeah, so just wanted to, maybe I should ask that as the next question is, has anybody heard of the Vancouver Economic Commission before? Okay, that's great. So we are actually the City of Vancouver's economic development agency. We've been around for more than 15 years. We've got a team of about 18. We're divided in roughly two groups. We've got a few specialists, but we have a team of research and analysts and economists on one side, and we have a business development team on the other. And our mandate really is to help local companies right here in Vancouver grow their business, create an environment for economic growth, and specific focus on the green economy. And there's a lot more things that we do, but I want to get through to the panelists as soon as possible. So this is our Greenest City Action Plan. How many people have read it or have seen it, heard about it, been to any of the events? There's quite a large public process involved in drafting the plan. We think it's pretty exciting. That first target area, green economy capital, the Economic Commission owns that target. That's the only one we own. Mm-hmm. And, the taglines is secure Vancouver's international reputation as a mecca of green enterprise. We have numerical numbers. We're trying to double the number of green jobs by 2020. That's 14,900 jobs between now and 2020. We also have a secondary goal, and it's the greening of the business operations of the companies that exist in Vancouver, and that's actually 50%. So we want to green 50% of those businesses. So this red box here actually is misplaced. It's supposed to be wrapping around number 10 here. That target area is pretty interesting. This is the one that we want to talk about tonight. So become a global leader in urban food systems. Again, by 2020. So essentially the number that we're measuring here is increasing the city and neighborhood food assets. So what are the assets that we have today, and how do we increase them? So there's a list. We've done our research, we've counted them all, and now we want to double them. In fact, it looks like it's 54.4% increase by 2020. We got a lot of detail, a lot of research to back all of this up. I don't want to bore you with those details, just a very high-level picture to show how committed we are at the Vancouver Economic Commission, but also the City of Vancouver and city staff in making sure that we make it much easier for local food, urban agriculture, urban food systems to thrive and flourish and grow right here inside of the city. We've got a couple of reports I wanted to share with you. The one on the left is, I think it's 2 years old now, but it's still quite relevant. It really describes the Vancouver food economy, how it works, what's going on in the city. The second report is really quite fresh off the press. I think we, was that say March of 2012, so just last month we published it. And it's more specific to the companies themselves. We've got a great database of companies now that are in local food. Of course, there's a specific definition of what does that mean? Does that mean restaurants? Does it just mean agriculture? That's all defined in the reports. So there's a link right here, vancouvereconomic.com. If you're interested in learning more about what's going on in the city, invite you to read both of those reports. And contact information, we do have some dedicated resources to the green economy. John McPherson, maybe just stand up very quickly. He's our business development officer dedicated to the green economy. Cleantech, local food, water, wastewater, all the different asset classes. Very well connected. You should get to know him. He's got lots of business cards here tonight, and happy to tell you about all the other programs that we have. Okay, so I'm going to introduce the first speaker. And somebody, I guess, will switch slides. So, Dr. Tara Moreau. Dr. Moreau is a postdoctoral. Can you, everybody hear me? Is this close enough? Can you hear me in the back? Yep. So, Dr. Moreau is a postdoctoral research fellow working on a collaborative project between PICS, UBC, and Kwantlen Polytechnic University, where she is assessing regional greenhouse gas fluxes in urban and peri-urban agriculture systems to identify methods of reducing emissions, estimating greenhouse gases, and sequestering carbon. Dr. Moreau recently completed a PhD at the University of British Columbia, where she evaluated alternative pest controls for whiteflies in commercial greenhouses. She has worked as an organic agriculture consultant with the United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization and is a vice president of the Society Promoting Environmental Conservation. So let's please welcome Tara Moreau as our first speaker.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks very much. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be here because I like the work that I do. And I think it's fascinating that everyone else is beginning to like food and food systems also. So I work with the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions, and I decided in 10 minutes I wasn't going to go over all of the challenges of climate change and sort of give you a different perspective of where I'm thinking and where I'm at right now in my work. And I think it comes to the fact that I wear multiple hats, as we all do. We all wear multiple hats. My main hat is and I'm paid as a postdoc researcher looking at how do we mitigate greenhouse gases. My background is in agriculture production and how do we do and find solutions to problems that are facing agriculture production. The second big hat that I wear is with the Society Promoting Environmental Conservation. And there I am very fortunate to be involved in a number of grassroots projects related to putting gardens in schools and doing pocket markets and engaging with urbanites about how to incorporate urban sustainable food systems into their thinking. The most recent project that we just launched in April was the SPEC YWCA Urban Farmer Field School, and we're really excited about this concept because what we're trying to do is train urban farmers and new farmers in sustainable practices and have them engaged in opportunities where they have direct access to markets. And the third hat I'm involved in is my policy hat, and I've just joined the Vancouver Food Policy Council. And another aspect is working at the UNFAO, where I have involved in doing a number of projects related to sustainability over the last number of years, and have got to see sort of at the international level what are the policies that are driving food and the challenges that are addressing food. So I think we all wear this hat. We are all consumers, and this is where we all unite. And every day, 3 times a day, we vote with our dollars for breakfast, lunch, and dinner about the type of food and the type of systems we want to support. And so the challenge is that it's hard to be a consumer. It's hard to know if local is better than organic, or if this is healthy, this tomato from a hothouse, how this compares to one grown in a field. And the reality is it's very difficult to generalize. So what can I tell you? And in 10 minutes, I was trying to be succinct. So basically, food systems are complicated. Change is imperative. There are many solutions, but the problem is change is hard. So why are food systems so complicated? I always think of food systems as 8 steps, where you have your inputs that go into the farm, you have your farm itself, you have your post-harvest handling, which isn't actually a very big deal here in a developed country, but in developing countries, this is the stage where most food waste happens. You have processing and packaging, you have distribution, you're working towards retailing, consumption, and then waste. And the challenge is within this value-added chain are all these drivers and all these pressures that exert forces, and with different objectives and ideas of how this food system should be run. So change is imperative. Working in climate change is depressing. Having children and working in climate change is even more depressing. And I think it's really important that we address the issue at a local level. And this is a picture I took on a plane arriving into Vancouver, and it was a day where it looked like you could clearly see how a rising sea level was going to have a direct impact on our local food. So what I've been learning and studying alternative pesticides for a number of years is that there's a lot of solutions that exist. They're out there and they're available, but the problem is getting people and farmers and society to adopt those solutions. So I think there's some really interesting technology solutions, things that are happening, trying to get farmers engaged. iCow, which I thought was actually hilarious, but it's a program that farmers in Africa can use on their phones to remind them how to do proper breeding for their cows. So how do we actually get education to the farmers when they need it and where they need it? So there's many solutions related to alternative energies, and we're going to hear tonight from some speakers about those different alternatives, anaerobic digesters and methods of how do we desalinize water. And there's, I think, a lot of opportunity for us to be exploring technology for local processing. But I think the focus and what I wanted to really talk to tonight was how change is hard. So how do we enable change? How do we get the ideas that the sustainability community is thinking out and running within our everyday life? And so I see a disconnect. I see a multitude of organizations that have different theories of change and how we get there. I'm trained in an academic process in which we address our issues, we do our research, we gain knowledge, we have wisdom, we make all these wonderful recommendations, and then in theory we're supposed to say go. But in academia, in my experiences, we don't often go. The research can sit there well published in journals that no one has access to. So, on a community level approach, we just go all the time. We're going here, we're going there, we're trying to make change, but we're not necessarily informed with the cutting edge research because it's not always available to us. So for me, what I see is this really important need for us to bring together these different processes for how change happens. How do we bring the academic research where it's really giving us good direction of where to go and combine that with local level grassroots projects? And the one thing that I think that's missing and that I think is really important that we need to add to this scenario are the farmers. And these are the people who are the change agents. These are the people who are going to adopt our technologies. These are the people that we need to be working with and engaging, that need to be in this room and thinking about these technologies, because they're the ones who are going to tell you whether they're totally out to left field or not. And so When working with farmers, though, and my experience of working with farmers is that you have to be aware that farmers are just like us. They wear a multitude of hats. They are business managers, they're land managers, they're parents, and they are very busy. So we need to give them the tools to enable them to be able to adopt the practices and the technologies and the solutions that exist. And that's it. That's all. Thank you very much. The light.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay, so I forgot to mention that we are going to have an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation, so they'll all come up here afterwards at the table, and we'll have lots of time for questions at the end. So our next speaker, Stephen Fain. So Stephen is currently the CEO of Altera Systems, a company concentrating on developing and implementing vertical urban agriculture solutions. Prior to his involvement with Altera, Stephen was a hydroponic greenhouse entrepreneur. In 1990, he acquired a 5-acre hydroponic greenhouse operation that produced bell peppers, which he expanded to over 75 acres, all under glass. This evening, Stephen will present a new development by Altera Systems called Verticrop, an innovative leafy greens and herbs production system being installed in the city of Vancouver. In fact, just a few blocks away, right on the edge of Gastown, and in between Gastown and Main Street. Stephen Fain.
Thank you. I was going to start off with a new word I learned, which is paraprosdokian, and a figure of speech with an unusual or unexpected end, and such as where there's a will, I want to be in it. A couple of slides that came up, or one slide that came up in the last presentation, which I thought was really quite good, was knowledge and wisdom on the progression. And to me, that's the opportunity to use another paraprosdokian, which is knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit, and wisdom is not putting it in a fruit salad. I guess you had to be there, but there you are. I was. What I want to talk about is what we're going to be doing in terms of this project in the city of Vancouver. It's fairly high risk. We've had terrific support by a number of people within the city and within Van City, which we very much appreciate. But we are taking on something that's a little bit different. We think it's a real solution, and I guess time will tell whether it is or it isn't. What we're proposing is which I'll describe in a minute, a solution that's buildable, scalable, and we think can handle some of the larger scale problems and issues that we face. The very real need, I think, has already been described, or you already have a disposition to water, environmental impact, freshness, lower waste, that kind of thing. It was interesting that Professor Beddington was brought up earlier. It's staggering, these numbers, and it's very difficult to read an article on the problems that agriculture faces, to not just have to embrace these numbers. It's just a fact. We don't have water, we don't have land, we have terrific food waste, and if we're actually expecting to feed 9.2 million people who are increasingly urbanizing themselves, we're not ready. But I think we can be, with everybody pulling the same way. I'll talk a little bit about Alteris, about Verticrop, and the project we have here underway in the city. Alteris was formerly Velcent Products. We changed the name because Velcent didn't make a whole lot of sense. Alteris to us does. We're Vancouver-based, and our model is to have the best technology on the market for urban vertical farming, own the brand, and actually produce and sell the produce that we generate from our facilities. The company is in my view, driven by, I think, also good values, in that our mission statement and our vision statement doesn't talk about making money and making profits. It's about doing the right thing, and we think that as a result of that, we'll make money. Verticrop, I don't know how many of you know about it, but essentially it's a 4-meter high system inside a structure. It can be a warehouse, it can be a greenhouse. The project on Richard Street is a greenhouse, which I'll describe to you. It's closed loop, fully contained, like a hydroponic greenhouse would be, except that all the produce is stacked on trays that progress through the structure. And as a result of that, we have higher density. We don't have crop workers in the crop. The crop comes about and moves to the irrigation stations. It moves to the harvest stations, and any activity that's required for harvesting and recharging the system takes place at a single location in the greenhouse. We have an even airflow. We capture all the excess water, the overfeed, and as I say, it's conducive to an optimum workflow within the facility. Just as an aside, we were working on some numbers today to look at the energy equivalence of this facility. It will have augmented lights, which is important to know, so that we get even light throughout the facility. But we've calculated the cost of energy to run this greenhouse being less than the cost of shipping and processing organic field production in Southern California fields in terms of kilowatt hour equivalents of use, not counting all sorts of other variables like the cost of moving water around in field production in California. So it is less than neutral. Owning a brand, that's going to be our brand, and when you see it in September or October of this year, we'd certainly like your feedback as to what you think about it. It's going to be picked and shipped and hopefully consumed same day. It'll be produced sustainably, and for anybody who likes to eat, it'll be delicious. I have 5 minutes. I have 25 minutes left for conversation. So 535 Richard Street. This is a graphic of it, but this greenhouse has been ordered, and we're underway with the city planning department to establish it. This first phase is the one closest to you see here. It'll be about 6,000 square feet, producing 150 to 190,000 pounds per year of salads, leafy greens, herbs, and specialty greens. Continuous harvesting 12 months of the year, and all packaging and distribution on site. Partners in it are City of Vancouver and Van City. They've both been really quite phenomenal at helping us with this. The parking garage is owned by the city. It's a better deployment. It runs at about 60% or less occupancy. The top 5 floors haven't seen cars on them for 5 years. And what you'll now see up there is a greenhouse that is producing leafy green production right in the center of the city. We adopt best practices strategy for GAP, GFSI. We're exploring some packaging that we think will be rather unique from an environmental point of view, and we're totally GMO-free inputs. The financing is secured, at least with the city, for the top floor of the parking garage is signed. Permit process is underway, hopefully a good meeting planned for tomorrow. We've ordered the equipment, and we're expecting that by September we'll be in production. Just as an aside, the other markets that we're looking at, we feel strongly that if the solution is good for here, it'll be good for somewhere else. We've determined that if you are in 12 discrete locations in the U.S., you can be within 100 miles of 200 million people. And it wouldn't necessarily be just verticrop, but would include that, plus also some long crop production like tomatoes. But don't put them in a fruit salad. We're working on a project in Pittsburgh with a fellow named Bill Strickland, who some of you may know. And Epcot Center is going to put one of our systems in their facility. Why verticrop? Those are the obvious reasons. less water, greater quality, low food miles, and much higher concentration of the nutrients in the food that gets produced because it's picked, shipped, and consumed within a day. I think those are all obvious. Less water. We have determined that we use about 8% of the water that's used in conventional field production. Water loss due to evaporation, due to leaking into the aquifers, destroying the land, etc. Ours is a totally closed system. Just as a metric on size, for 0.16 acres, I don't think it's very clear from the back, we can produce the same amount as a northern U.S. field of 16 acres in terms of equivalent volume of production. You don't want to know about that. That's just me. I'm done. Oh, no, I'm not quite done. I'm sorry. I did have another, and this is actually very important. Well, to me it is. Another para-prosdokian. When you come to a wide in the road, take it. And I think that's where we are in some respects. We don't have all the answers. Some routes will be successful, some won't. We believe this will, but we're going to work at it hard enough that it will. And solving the problems that we see, or that we all see in front of us on the agricultural side, will require many, many solutions by many right-thinking people doing the right thing for the right reasons. And there isn't a diversion and there isn't a direct path. It's everyone trying to come up with innovative, bold solutions to the problem, because the onslaught of the issues that we face is inevitable and very, very soon. And I have children and grandchildren I worry about, as probably you do too, and we need to do this and we need to do it now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. I just got a phone call from my parents last night. They're in Phoenix, 100 degrees, no water. And I'm thinking 8% of water consumption is an absolutely amazing statistic. So certainly, wish you the best in your export development, market development, especially in those in the Southwest U.S. Sounds like a great market for you. Okay, Chris Bush. Chris Bush is the founder of Catalyst Power and built the first anaerobic digester for agriculture in BC, which is also still the only agriculturally based digester delivering biomethane into a utility grid. After building the facility, he has now returned to his initial intent of enabling emerging technologies to develop through integration and collaboration. Please welcome Chris Bush.
That sounds very good. Whoever wrote that, I should find them. I'm going to try to get back to the beginning if I can. Did I go the wrong way? That was the end. It's okay. We can go backwards. You know, both previous speakers talked about wisdom. I've learned that good decisions come from wisdom, and wisdom comes from bad decisions. And I've spent the last 8 years gaining a lot of wisdom. Like I said, 8 years ago, I picked up a copy of Popular Science, and I read a story about the Cow Power program in Vermont, and something lit that there's an opportunity here. By reading it and studying and learning, I understood that how it's being done isn't necessarily the right answer for here, but digestion is part of the solution. Digesters don't get rid of the nutrients, but they process it. They make it into products with more potentials, that different things can be done. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about a program that we envision called Technology Meets Permaculture. A lot of great books out there about permaculture. One called The Contrary Farmer, I think, is quite interesting. Our world has really moved to silos, to isolation, to monocropping, to massive concentrations of animals. And I think that has some specific benefits for small groups of people, but in general, I don't think it's a sustainable answer. I think that there's better ways that things can be done. March 2007, Time magazine had a cover said, forget organic, eat local. And they talk about some of the different things, some of the reasons you want to do that. It was covered in the earlier slide, the half-life of vegetables. The local food allows personal responsibility and traceability. We can meet face-to-face with our farmers. We know who they are. Processing and preservatives has a lot of issues. When you pasteurize things, very often you've destroyed any nutrients that might be left. We have things that look and have been made chemically to taste like food, but there's very little value left in that. Packaging plus time equals opportunity for trouble. If there should be anything in the packaging, the longer it has to grow and live, the more dangerous it can be to us. And talk about the half-life of nutrients, like so that was covered before. But some of the nutrients, even at just a few days after that plant's been harvested, it maybe has some of the minerals in it, but the vitamin C, the different things, they're just not there anymore. There's an author by the name of Frederick Bastate. I think if you want some fresh thinking, you need to go back to the late 1800s. He wrote a series of essays called That Which Is Seen and That Which Is Not Seen. And a little bit of the preamble says, an act, a habit, an institution, a law, gives birth not only to an effect, but to a series of effects. Of these effects, the first only is immediate and manifests itself simultaneously with its cause. It is seen. The others unfold in succession. They are not seen. It is well for us if they are foreseen. We can see a lot of the things that are coming from the way we've been doing things. We're, in general, and guilty of this, we're fat, we're unhealthy, we're diabetic, we're all of these different health issues. We're taking vitamins and doing all these things, but still we're having health challenges. I'm going to talk today a little bit about changing how we think about things. If we'll think more holistically. There was a newspaper article today said, I don't believe there's any waste, only wastefulness. I think that the manures, the agricultural residuals, the things that are out there, they're wonderful opportunities if we will understand them, if we'll look at them in a full life cycle. It was talked today just about the local farming, the amount of energy goes into logistics, the environmental impacts of that. We're spending all sorts of money to move things around, doing damage to the environment, making our food near worthless. It doesn't make sense. And I'm a firm believer that we can have healthy, local, affordable food grown in Canada by Canadians if we'll change how we think about things a little bit. Talking about the greenhouse industry a little bit. Right now, it's a product base. They grow a product, they sell it. I think that if we'll change our thinking and see that the greenhouses can offer service, when we bring them into companion with things like digesters, we can take the manures from the farm, process them, take the Salmonella E. coli pathogens, stabilize the nutrients, do all sorts of good things, put them into the greenhouse, make the greenhouse a service industry now where they are enabling the sustainability of dairy and poultry farms. Those greenhouses can be growing food. There's a specific plant we're addressing called duckweed that will double its biomass every 48 hours. It will literally clean the water. They talked about water, energy, food. These don't need to be in opposition to each other or be competing. Right? If we use the plants to clean the water and feed the animals and pull energy, that same duckweed has almost as much starch as corn. We can pull ethanol out of it. We can answer all of the questions in the same track if we'll change our thinking. There's a book called Unlimited Wealth by a guy, Paul Zane Pilzer, has his theory of economic alchemy. He says wealth equals physical resources multiplied by technology, and technology is multiplies on itself. Okay. Yeah, we have a massive quantity. My friends at UBC were telling me that there's a lot of noise today about peak oil. We should be far more concerned about peak phosphorus. Yet in the lower Fraser Valley, we're swimming in it. We have the largest concentration of dairy and poultry farms, at least in Canada, maybe anywhere in the world, in the lower Fraser Valley. It's some of the most amazingly fertile soil. But if we're polluting it by spreading the nutrients on at the levels we are, we're not going to have that gift anymore. We can do good things, turn it into great value, or we can keep going how we are and suffer eventually for it. I love formulas. I love quotes. Anybody that's heard me speak before, they say success is not a matter of spontaneous combustion. You have to set yourself on fire. And status quo cannot continue. Last slide, why ACES? We are proposing a program called ACES, stands for Agricultural Center of Excellence in Sustainability. And we propose to build a site that will serve agriculture, but not just with botanists, not just with microbiologists, but with chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, people from every faculty across universities. And we'll invite the very best minds of all the universities. This site will be institutionally agnostic. It will not be just an SFU or a UBC or a Kwantlen facility. Everyone will be invited to come and work here and learn together. We're going to put the best machines that are available, be it pyrolysis or ethanol or whatever they might be. We're going to put them all in a place together and let all the smartest people come and play with them. See what happens when you link a fish farm to a pasteurizer system. A lot of these different things in processing need a band of heat, for example. If we can put 3 or 4 different processes that need a specific piece of that, they can share in the cost of the energy. It's efficiency. It's, like I said, it's that wastefulness that we need to address if we want to eat safe, healthy, local, affordable food. Why ACES? Sustainability is not synonymous with sacrifice. Diamantis, the fellow that leads the X Prize Foundation, just wrote a book called Abundance. Quite an interesting way of thinking about things. The future is not necessarily one of scarcity, as we're being told today. There's great opportunity. Nothing happens in isolation. There's always a cause and effect. Everything we do, it impacts something else. In our world today, we need roundtables, not cubicles. I'm very excited. I took a course with a fellow from McGill recently on managing millennials. I'm excited about this new generation because people my age and older, we wanted to do it ourselves. We wanted to be lone rangers. We wanted to be in silos. People today are interested in joining a cause. Let's change the world, make it a better place together. And really, that's the answer. We need solution teams, not lone rangers and silos. We need paradigm shifts, not more paving of cow paths. Just changing how we do things a little bit to try to make it somewhat less unsustainable. That's never going to get us where we need to go. We need to step back, go up a level, look at things more holistically, and understand we're in this together if we're going to answer these questions. We must not be judgmental, but we should be fruit inspectors. If something is not working, the wrong thing done perfectly is still the wrong thing. We should be intolerant because some things are dumb. Current emperor has no clothes, but we have a voice. How things are done, we're told today that that's just how it is. We have to eat GMO foods or we'll all starve. We have to deal with less. We have to live less well. We can't travel. We can't do these things. I don't believe it. I think that we can have it all if we're smart, if we'll just stop being so wasteful. I think I'm done. A quote I came up with a little while ago, single solution in isolation is linear. We cannot respond to the dynamic challenges of today with linear solutions. And that only when we come together with the goal of common good can we hope to achieve the full potential of success. There is a new website. It's about, I think, 11 days old now, www.aces-bc.ca. It talks a little bit about the beginning. This is literally in its fledgling stage. We're starting our first projects where we're combining anaerobic digestion with ponds growing duckweed to do phytoremediation, remove the nutrients from the plants. Those plants can then go into ethanol trials, can go into feeding trials, go into all sorts of different things. But we're going to start to show that we can use the most amazing solar collectors in the world to do the process of cleaning our water, plants. If there's any questions, feel free. Please reach out. My phone number's on there as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris. We need roundtables, not cubicles. I love it. Speaks to community collaboration and so on. Our next and final speaker, Herb Barbalet. Herb is an associate with both the Center for Sustainable Community Development and the Dialogue Center at SFU, and a research associate with the Canadian Center for Policy Alternatives. He founded and for 10 years was executive director of Farm Folk, City Folk. He was also on CBC Almanac Food Panel for 13 years. Herb helped found Local Food First, a consortium of organizations developing a business approach to relocalizing our food supply. Please welcome Herb.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks to Greentech Exchange and the previous speakers. It was excellent. I'm not going to use slides, and I'm going to tell stories because just very recent past, I started telling stories instead of linear presentations, and I like it. I found it's working. So we'll see whether it does. Two very quick stories, and then the themes that come out of them and what could be learned from them, I hope. In the mid-1970s, a group of my friends and others got together and we bought an organic farm in Aldergrove, a 10-acre farm. About 10 years later, I moved out onto the farm and with my family, and then found commuting to be too much of a burden. So we spent a year to figure out how to make a living from the farm. And, right. We explored a wide variety of options, and we had this community of people had also started a cooperative restaurant on Granville Island. Some of you may remember Isidora's. And so we had a great chef there, and we tried out a lot of products with them. We came across an idea for an exotic salad, and there was one producer in the United States who was making these beautiful salads with 30 or 40 ingredients in them. And we decided to try that out, and we found a technique for increasing the production tenfold over what they were doing. And we built this Glorious Garnish and Seasonal Salad Company Limited, which was too long a title, and decided, we had a cooperative in Kitsilano that had the first edible landscaping, solar collectors on the roofs that we built ourselves, balcony gardens, rooftop gardens, and the rest, and the farm was organic. We decided the salad company would be as green as possible, so we bought a salad delivery van, a refrigerated van, that ran on liquefied natural gas. We built a greenhouse. First, we were using cloches and tunnels and plastic and glass, and then we decided to build an active and passive solar greenhouse. And we spent a great deal of money and a lot of time on it. And we found out in short order that the cloches and the tunnels produced very close to the same amount of product that this very expensive greenhouse was producing. All of our work was extremely labor-intensive. We marketed to the white tablecloth restaurants, the best restaurants in Vancouver, and I would go around and market it as the most expensive legal greens you could buy. And for some reason that worked. It was really interesting. About the third year that we were into our production, we were growing on about that point about 3 acres of the 10-acre parcel, and we had a revenue of $100,000 per acre, $300,000 for the 3 acres. John Deere magazine picked this up, and they put us on the cover of their international edition. One day the phone rang, and I got a call and said, "Hi, y'all. I'm down here in Georgia. I've got 15,000 acres. You're the ones making $100,000 an acre on greenhouse, on salad?" Yeah. Well, there may be a problem with that. A few years later, California growers started to flood the market in BC with what's now ubiquitous and seen everywhere in the tubs of these salads. Ours had usually about 35 ingredients. The present salads have about 7 or 8, but it took a large part of our market share. They were selling in the supermarket for half of our production costs. The company, Glorious Salad, is still going 27 years later, 17 years after I left, and it's still successful. And I went on to start Farm Folk City Folk. So that's the first story. Second story, after the California imports, we realized we had to diversify our revenue streams. So I was selling salads and edible herbs and edible flowers to the Four Seasons Hotel, and they were serving at the end of their meal this god-awful chocolate mint. There was candy, and it just wasn't their standard and wasn't right. And here I was selling them really extremely high-quality mint. And I said, why can't you just put chocolate on that and have a real chocolate mint? The chefs tried for a year and wasn't able to come up with anything, but he had a pastry chef, Greg Hook, who was able to do it. And we started wholesaling chocolate mint and also other covered chocolate herbs. Greg found that wasn't satisfactory. We weren't able to sell enough wholesale for this to work. I knew the Haida artist, Robert Davidson. I asked him if he could make a mold. He made molds of his artwork and collectible edibles, and we started selling that, and it worked really well. Greg opened up a retail store. The store, almost a quarter of a century later, is still going and successful. So what are the lessons that we can learn from this? There are an endless number of possibilities for creating successful and satisfying food and agricultural micro and mini businesses. Scaling up is hard, extremely hard. In Georgia or California, it's possible to grow 15,000 acres of a particular crop and to market it. In BC, in part because of our small population, limiting geography, northern climate, there are very few food producers who are not micro or mini entrepreneurs. We produce 250 land-based commodities and 80 sea-based commodities, more than all of the rest of Canada combined. And we do it on very small plots of land, and we do it with family-owned farms. We're not corporatized, as a lot of other places are. But most of our food comes from globalized food systems and industrialized food systems. Players in every sector, except the farmers, the fishers, and the consumers, are heavily, heavily concentrated. In every sector along the supply chain, there's fewer than a handful of corporations that control 40 to 80% of all of the global trade. Maybe 5 corporations in processing in turkeys and beef controlled usually about 60 to 80% of all of the trade. These vast corporations produce very little real food. Real food, in Michael Pollan's terms, consists of ingredients your grandmother could pronounce. They produce a small number of similar products that are packaged and marketed in a way to create the illusion that we have choice. Most of it's junk food. Real food requires very little processing, so it's perishable. Large corporate entities can't make the billions in profits that they make from real food. The processing sector is hollowed out. At one point in BC, there were 500 tomato processors and 500 fruit processors. Now there are virtually no processors of any scale at all. There's Nature's Path is the largest organic cereal company in North America, but they're one of the few large-scale producers that still remain. Our labor and energy and most other costs will be higher from almost every food product that we produce. China, some Arab countries, and others are betting that buying farmland abroad for their own food production, for themselves, is the wisest investment imaginable. Farmland in BC is already some of the costliest in the world. It's only going to get more costly. But because of the perfect storm that was talked about, because of climate chaos, as Tara spoke about, because of peak everything, financial chaos, security issues, and on ad nauseum, and because imports require enormous energy inputs for production and distribution, we will need a new local food producing business and many businesses. Especially, we will need education and training because we have lost the farmers, we've lost the skills, the next generations are not moving into it, and we need new technologies for communicating, for educating, for training. Those that make the most sense are those that will be resilient in the face of turmoil. utilizing permaculture. Thank you for using the term. How many of you are familiar with permaculture? Wow, fantastic. Permanent culture, permanent agriculture. It's not only a production system, it's a way of thinking. Someday planners are going to get it, that permaculture is the way to plan. It means the energy is closest to home. We'll use permaculture principles in streamlining and rationalizing transportation, housing, and production and disposal systems, and will lead to new food systems and food enterprise opportunities. Food is not a commodity the same as any other. It is not a commodity the same as any other. It is the essence of life. Bio and nanotechnologies are not a part of the solution. Green technology must be local and organic. Also, speaking of niche markets, I consult for a few.
Nice plug. Okay, so another round of hand for all four panels. Very diverse, very interesting. Thank you. So I'm going to ask all four panelists to come up to the front, grab a seat. I'm going to wander through the audience with the microphone, handing out... Sorry? Okay, I've been corrected. You don't get a microphone. Only these guys get a microphone. Questions? Yes, and I guess why don't we ask each person that's asking a question to stand up, quickly introduce yourself, and then you can ask the question. And direct the question, too, if you have a specific individual in mind. Verticroc, Stephen Fain.
My question was, I love the idea, and I'm assuming that is that you're not using any soil in that, or are you?
No soil.
So where is sustainability in the nutrients? Because one of the panelists mentioned not just peak oil, but peak phosphorus, which is 30 years, I believe it is, for phosphorus. So where are we getting nutrients for that system?
They use the same nutrient that a typical hydroponic greenhouse facility would use. The thing that's important is that it's not reintroduced into the water systems. It's all recycled. The other important thing that I think is of interest is that we are exploring some liquid solutions that are organic in nature, or approved organic. So it is just it's a typical hydroponic system on each of those trays.
Which would be sustainable when we run out of non-organic nutrients, such as, our fertilizers are going to run out if they're not organic. So with a non-soilless system, my limited knowledge, I'm a dietitian, so I don't have a soil science background, but if it's not soil, then it has to be mined. It has to be...
Well, soil obviously has to be augmented as well. So fertilizers are introduced into soil to maintain their vibrancy and relevance. The sources would be the issue, whether it is organic or whether it is a chemical fertilizer. And for the moment, it's chemical fertilizers. For the longer term, it'll be organic fertilizers. Yeah.
Okay, just stick up your hand. Anybody, questions? At the very back. Again, stand up and introduce yourself.
I do product design for urban cultivator. I was wondering, you mentioned that nanotechnology wasn't part of the solution, but I see that technology in everyday materials that form the basis for a lot of green technology solutions. Could you perhaps explain your comment?
Sure. The Government of Canada is beginning to have discussions about how to define nanotechnology. They will then, once they've defined it, begin to talk about the possibilities of how it may be regulated. I was involved in a process more than a dozen years ago when the government of Canada said that they will require labeling for biotechnology. And if the industry didn't bring it in, then they would make it mandatory. A dozen years later, there's still no labeling. When there's no labeling, there's no traceability. When there's no traceability, there's no accountability. When there's no accountability, there's no liability. When there's no liability, I don't know any other consumer products that have no traceability and no liability. Nanotechnology can pass through the blood-brain barrier, nanotechnology particles. We have no idea. It is the most powerful technology ever encountered, and that is for good or for evil. And we have no means of really understanding what we're doing. And so I would prefer not to go that direction.
Next question. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I'm very interested in urban agriculture in general, and I have a question. In general, what are the issues regarding urban pollution on urban agriculture, and does pollution such as residential cars have large impact on health?
Okay, just for the benefit of everyone in the back, I'll repeat the question. So the question was, what is the impact of urban pollution on urban farming? And the second part was that that's pretty sums it up. So, and who is that question directed to?
Anybody who'd like to jump in.
Okay, urban farming. Let's start with Stephen.
I'm not sure that this isn't a dangerous talking stick we have here, but it's my understanding, firstly, that the amount of airborne particulates is probably as bad, if not worse, on agricultural land than it might be in the city. As a general statement that I can't support, but it's a sense I have. Certainly when you drive up the valley, you'll definitely see that the pollution is more pervasive there than here, and that's probably just a benefit of where we're living close to the city in particular.
Vancouver versus the Fraser Valley.
Yeah.
We're very fortunate.
Yeah.
For other cities such as New York, LA.
Yeah. Well, obviously there are pockets of more or less acceptable environmental impacts that you have. In a closed environment, in a greenhouse environment, you do have some control over that. I would say, though, that the other urban solutions, plots and street gardens and that sort of thing are probably is beneficial to the community that you're in terms of what they're consuming, what the plants are consuming. So I think as a net gain, and again, I don't have a number to support this, but that the existence of urban growing is probably beneficial from an environmental point of view without being detrimental to one's health. But I'd like some other help on this.
Tara, any comments from Tara on that?
This question is asked often, and I think it's a real concern that people share of the safety of growing in an urban setting. I recently saw a study where they were looking at heavy metal contamination in the soils in Halifax, and they were finding that there was significant heavy metal contamination in urban agriculture areas. And so I think it's about addressing the fact that we are growing food in a city on soils that may or may not have been contaminated in previous history. So it's about doing things such as making raised beds, and it's about being proactive in managing your soil. I'd say that's the first step. And as for air particulates, I would be more worried about heavy metals within the soil than air particulates. Do you want to add to that?
Firstly, urban agriculture and organic agriculture combined are less than, probably around 2% of all the food production. So 98% of the food you're eating, a lot of it has all sorts of contaminants in it and junk. So as a proportion of your diet, it's probably not going to be huge unless you're growing your own food, and you're not going to likely be growing most of your protein or your grains. The heavy metals are correct, but they are heavy metals. And being heavy, they don't travel very far, usually, depending on the metal, 30 to 60 feet. And so you can mitigate the problems with berms and with strategic placements, and definitely in most places with double-dug French-intensive raised beds.
Great question. Next, yes, brown sweater.
My name is Gerardo Montero. I'm a professor of sociology at history. I guess it's a question for the panel. I think, except for Herb, who mentioned the socioeconomic structure of the input-producing sector and the processing and distributing sector, nobody else really mentioned sociological or social relations here. And one critical aspect of BC agriculture, it seems to me, is the work regime under which food is being produced. And as far as I know, horticultural production is based on mostly immigrant workers, racialized immigrant workers, paid on a piece rate basis, extremely low, and increasingly Mexican migrants. Under very problematic conditions. So, I mean, this leads me to raise the question about this sort of glorification of local food production. I mean, under what socioeconomic conditions is it the work regime?
Did everyone hear that in the back? We haven't heard anything from Chris yet.
I'll take a stab at it. I think that we're seeing that because the economic pressures that who will work for the least amount of money. I talked a lot of different times that any job is worth the least amount of money. Someone will do it efficiently or will do it well for, a competent person will do it for. If we have this single income stream, the greenhouses or farms or things like that, if their incomes are based only on the product and everyone is trying to spend as least as they possibly can, then we're going to continue in things like that. If we will, again, take that step back, go up a level and look at this, that becomes personal, that we know the farmers that are growing our food, and we start getting involved in this together, that we're addressing the energy issues and the water issues and the food issues and the job issues, that we're looking more holistically at permanent culture, permanent agriculture. Sustainability. If we want to have a quality of life, we need people to have a reasonable income and healthy food. And as far as the cost goes, that's another issue I think that we're suffering, is that people just think about the immediate, that which is seen, right? What they pay for their food. If they would understand that if you'll eat healthy food, if you'll eat lettuce that you grew in your garden this day, you're maybe not going to have diabetes or some of these other issues. It's going to help your health. You're going to spend less on healthcare later. If we'd start to understand that, if we'll concentrate on looking after us now, we won't have to spend so much looking after us later.
I don't think that, and this is something that really troubles me, we have no idea what it really costs to produce what we eat. We have no idea of the implications of growing in different situations. We have no idea of the permanent costs of the social costs, the environmental costs, the real costs. And I'm an ex-bean counter, so I have kind of an orientation this way. We don't really know what our food costs us. And in fact, it costs us very little relative to the implications of that production. And that's worrisome. And it's worrisome not just because of the social, of the environmental, of all of the other impacts that we don't put in as credits or costs against production. But there's another reality that is that's highlighted by that last question. We put up a slide that shows that we need 50% more food, we need 30% more water, we need X amount more energy to produce, and our systems don't even contemplate the proper allocation of those costs. Take water. The the amount of water that's consumed in large-scale production in California, for instance, is massive. And if we really accounted for the fact that the water levels in the Colorado and the basin and it's a critical factor. And although I have a lot of passion for and compassion for the idea of solving the problem at a local level, which is what I really think we have to do, you have to also put it in the context of a bigger issue. And I don't think that we're really going to address the fundamental problem until we properly account for what it costs for what we eat and what we do to the world as a result of what we do to produce the food that we have to have. I mean, we are incredibly lucky in this room in so many ways for what we have access to, for the kind of food that we have available to us. And I'm preaching about we don't know what the cost is. Well, I don't know either. And it's a troubling thing. We need to find out more about that, and we need to find it out fast, and we need to find out how we can use the system of communicating that information to really appreciate what food is and what it does for us and to us.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and it's a perfect segue. North America, we have two food systems, one for the well-off and another one for the rest of us, and they're very different food systems. And we don't know a lot about each other's food system, except the not-so-well-off can see what we're eating. The food banks and all of the processes for providing for those less well-off are trying to solve a social safety net problem through the food system, and it can't be done. BC has a foreign worker program that brings in migrant labor, and each year it's been increasing and bringing in more and more Mexican and Guatemalan further away labor. And some of it actually does work. There are some producers, some farmers that treat the workers quite well. And there are others who don't, like anything in society. The truth of the matter is that immigrants have always been the ones who have produced the food. And they're going to be the ones that we will need to rely on more and more. So at a conference I was at not too long ago, somebody said, why does nobody come to me, a person of color? Why does nobody come to me and ask me about how to produce? Why are you telling me how I should be growing your food? Because I actually know better than you do.
The redhead in the second row.
I'm Megan Avalon with the Shannon Company, and we are in the process of putting together a report on agricultural clean technology, focus on clean technology, and we see this as an emerging subject for a while, and are really anxious to use this. I'm curious what sort of, because we're talking about Cleantech exchange, what sort of technologies you've seen, not just here, but around the world that you think hold promise.
So for the benefit of the back of the room, the question is, what technologies are you seeing that hold promise in enabling the local food economy? Go ahead, Tara.
Oh, my strength isn't in technology. So, but I did have the slide, and I think that, I think social media is an interesting way to engage farmers in education. I think there's great models with the anaerobic digestion, so ways that we can be closing the energy loop on farms and recycling it back in. I think that is a priority area to enable farms to be off the grid, and I think that speaks to sort of the practices that permaculture advocate for and the recycling of nutrients. So I think technologies that can almost look to permaculture and emulate the things that it's trying to do would be a great way to move forward. But I do think that farmer education is a really interesting way to engage farmers. And as we're talking about some farmers, some immigrant workers are well taken care of and some are not. And the reality is that there's a diverse range of people out there growing food and who are farm managers. And so we have to help people who manage both the land and other people to be better and to be able to do their jobs. And the reality is we need to pay them a wage that's acceptable. And I think that's a really important and big challenge when we don't actually pay for the cost that food actually is. So, everything I always see at the No Frills, it's like low prices, save on foods. Everything is advocating and selling cheap food. But the reality is we should be paying more for food, is my opinion.
Anybody else on promising technologies?
Yeah, there's a vertical growing system, I can tell. But I think there are other things that will work well, at least theoretically. I think there are changes in real advances being made in light technologies for being able to grow in a longer time during the day, and certainly in northern climates. I think there are some interesting technologies incorporating aquaculture with regular food production, although the disconnect on the size and the scale of operation you need on the conversion of foods and fish to be able to be used in an agriculture or in a food production way, or produce production way, hasn't been worked out yet, and the economics haven't been worked out. That makes sense. I mean, there are people doing it, but it's not there yet. And I suppose it just takes minds thinking and trying things and seeing if it's possible. But it has to be done in reasonable scale. Usually, it has to be done in a way that's there's a lot of risks involved in translating that into something that actually works. And that's fine. I think that's just the way that it is. But it's going to take a whole lot of different kinds of technologies, I think, to solve the huge problem that we have. And the big slide is the thing that we also have to keep in mind. And we need to find new technologies. We need to find a way to have people be paid more because they're technologists, not laborers, and in a way that's kind of counterintuitive to local urban gardening and farming competencies. But I don't think you have to abandon the idea that there's a better way to automate it, or to handle it, or to process it, or to deal with it where you get a better product at the end of the day. So that's enough.
Okay, the handsome gentleman in the second row.
Hi, my name is Alvin. I've been a farmer for over 30 years in the agriculture industry, both dairy, poultry, and grain farming. I don't anymore. However, the question is around, you talk about change, farming, part of this change, which is true. Farming is also high capital investment propositions that happen. It takes a lot of farmers on the very extensive capital that has to be put in. The issue or the question I have for you is governmental policies. I've watched over the years how governmental policies, on international levels, local levels, and national levels, influence and dictate often what we can and can't do. I'm wondering if in the work you're doing, address or comment on how our government, both provincially or nationally, is playing itself out, especially now we have a lot of pressure on supply management, again, picking up interest. That plays into how our local farmers produce as well on an intensive level. So I'm just wondering if you're, in your experience, you can comment on governmental policy in relation to what the work you're doing.
Did everyone hear that in the back row? Okay.
I recently did a paper, and I was looking at the policies that are happening at the provincial and the national and international levels related to agriculture and climate change. And at a national level, just for agriculture, there's 135 different policies that affect agriculture. And so I think what we are faced with is something I call policy soup. And the reality is that you can't, it's difficult to take action because you don't know, and to make change when we have certain policies that are in place that they essentially contradict each other. Something that I think is really interesting is the city of Vancouver. I think Andrea Reimer is leading this campaign to really look at what are the policies within Vancouver, that are in place that are preventing urban agriculture from moving forward, and really trying to dissect that. And I think that's the role of government, is to say they're the ones who makes the policies. How do they have to sort of look at them and say, what are we doing here, and how do we take away the boundaries that are preventing people from doing things because policies are in place? I think it's a little bit frightening because it's a very daunting task, and when you bring in climate change policies, trade policies, economic policies, there's multiple objectives competing for land and for access to food and food systems. So I'm not sure if leaving it in the government hands is the best place to do it either, because their objectives might be different from our objectives. So I'm sorry if that doesn't really answer, but...
Thank you. I'll be a little more blunt. Well, at the federal and provincial level, we don't have a food policy, period. It's been advocating for food policy for decades, and it still doesn't exist. When senior governments want to do something, they do it. When they don't, they ask for science and evidence, and then do what they want anyway. And what they're doing is it's all export-oriented and large corporate-oriented. It's much easier to deal with a few large corporations than it is to do with farmers, and farmers in producing 250 different commodities. So the more recent federal and provincial policies, especially with excuse the expression, killing off the abattoirs. There was a meat inspection regulations that just destroyed almost all of the small slaughterhouses in many parts of the country, and particularly in BC, and created chaos and made it impossible for growers to produce protein on a small scale. And there's never been a case of that I'm aware of a safety problem on a small abattoir, but in the States they recalled 250 million pounds of frozen beef patties, but they still prefer that system to a small local. And I think by working with small local producers and building it up from the ground up, you're quite right, that's the way to change the culture and the way to change it, because after 30 years of trying, I decided, and I'm on the Federal Food Expert Advisory panel, and their budget was just cut, and we're not going to have a face-to-face meeting. So they say they're interested, but they're not.
I had a bit of experience with government and policy and things like that. When we set out to build our digester, I said it's the first one of its kind in British Columbia. There literally was nothing, and I learned as I went through it that the Ministry of Agriculture, one specific person had tried for almost 2 years or maybe even more to get an appointment with the Agricultural Land Commission to talk about the potential of anaerobic digesters and couldn't get a meeting. I called the Agricultural Land Commission one day, said I bought a farm and I'm going to build a digester, and a half hour later there was a meeting booked. So, I think that when we as a population look to our government to solve our problems, it's like me trying to give myself a blood transfusion, but I'm spilling 95% on the floor. I don't understand how having a third person in the equation, or more people or whole groups of people, can somehow make it more economical, make it better. It just, I think, creates more opportunity for lack of accountability, for stuff to disappear. Who knows where that came from, and that accountability we talked about. It's quite interesting. I think that the key to this is personal responsibility. When I demand that my seller, that I understand, that I know what I'm buying, then that's what we'll get. That if we'll just demand the lowest possible price, then we're going to get the lowest possible product.
Sorry, I just have to respond, sorry. I think what I said could logically be taken to the conclusion that you did, that it's personal responsibility. I think the problem is we're losing democracy, and we're losing our ability to have an influence on our governments, and that we have to take back. Government is part of the solution, but not in the way it's presently structured, and not with the redistribution of ridings that's going on now, and gerrymandering. I won't get into that.
Anybody from government in the room? Any bureaucrats? Any politicians? John, stick up your hand. Okay, we have time for 2 more questions maybe, so a couple of requests. First questions, there's 10 hands up, so I'll take the highest bidder. We'll start at $20. Second request is if we can keep the answers shorter, then we can get more questions in, and maybe we can get 3 or 4 in. So we'll try it out. We'll see how it goes. I was kidding about the $20. So, gentleman in the glasses. Sorry, that gentleman in those glasses. But just to be nice, I'll get to you. He can make the second one, the next question.
My name is Dave Dale. My background is renewable energy, and I'll just talk about the panel in general. You touched on it quite recently about the lack of water in the future, possibly desalinization to change salt water to potable water, and then Tara just touched on renewable energy, solar footprint. So we can do a calculation as to how much a new mine, a new liquid natural gas terminal puts on the grid. But what we can't do is determine how much an increase in local farming is going to introduce. We can tell population growth. So one of the key things going in the future in BC is we're going to run out of electricity to power our society. We won't be able to keep up with demand. So I guess my question to the panel is that how can you introduce the ability for BC to be self-sustaining in local food production without adding a further additional load on our electricity grid? So how can we be sustainable in that as well?
Did people in the back of the room hear the question? Just if you didn't, stick your hand up. Okay, we're good. So Verticrop has an answer.
I don't think I have exactly the answer that you want in terms of. I'm sorry?
It was a subtle plug.
Oh, was it? Oh, yeah, okay. Well, certainly what we're doing is using less energy than you would use for alternative production of the same amount. So I suppose in that sense, you're on a zero-sum game. You're ahead of the game by doing more concentrated agriculture. In terms of what I consider to be the extension of the question is, where else can we get energy from as opposed to hydropower or whatever kind of power that it is to solve the increased need for energy in urban centers to produce agricultural products. And I guess there's a range of things from geothermal to solar to wind to whatever it might be. Each of those, of course, have their implications for the community, for a whole host of things, but there will have to be trade-offs in where you source the energy required to produce the food, wherever you are.
With anaerobic digestion, we take natural gas off of the manure, so we get rid of the smell. We upgrade the product by pulling an energy product out of it. We're proposing now to use the effluent from the digester that we've taken the natural gas off of to grow plants that will produce ethanol from, all the while cleaning the water while we're at it. It's the more holistic approach where we're doing all of these things. That we will be doing full life cycle assessments showing the energy inputs versus the energy outputs, monitoring, producing a database for that as well, and looking. We're going to be doing lighting trials, looking at the absolutely most effective lighting solutions, for example, because they said we have to show the whole picture. It's been said we don't know what it costs. We're going to build that database from the operation we have.
Notice how Chris didn't shorten the answer, he just talked faster. Okay, the gentleman who I bypassed, sorry about that.
Hi, it's Matthew Unger, founder of the industry. So just wondering, from each of your perspective, you're coming from different aspects of food production, essentially. Certified organic, you guys kind of skirted around legislation and all sorts of things like that. What do you guys think of it coming from, one perspective or Concord City folks specialize in organics and the urban gardens where you guys don't use chemical fertilizer? What are your takes on that? Certified organic use?
So for the benefit of the back of the room, the question was, what is your take on the certified organic industry? Is that a fair restatement of your question? Tara?
Well, I think they've done a really great job, the organic industry, of taking a sustainable food system and bringing it to market. So so that's I'm a firm believer in organics. I think there's challenges to having people. Challenges to farmers, for instance. I believe that some farmers, the minute you say organic, they sort of stop listening. And so I think it's about communication and ways that you can create a situation and to sell something that can be appealing to everyone so that they can see the added advantages. I think it's difficult because forcing the organics isn't necessarily going to work, but having people sort of see that it's working and that they can get higher revenue for their crops, I think, are good models to move forward. I know it's a big challenge at the FAO. It's been being pushed forward, but the reality is that industry is stronger, and so it's actually, I think, moving organics forward has to deal a lot with how do we deal with the big industries, more so than how do we get organic moving forward, is looking at the alternative picture.
I think one of the differences between more mature societies than ours is that places like most of Europe prizes quality, and we're more into quantity and cost. And for me, organic tastes better, and it's better for the earth and richer. If it's certified organic, then I found it to be almost universally trustworthy. It's where they're using euphemisms or organic or fresh or anything else, where it's highly suspect. On the large scale, Walmart a few years ago said that they were going to require all of their producers to transition to organic and not steal producers from other suppliers. And if they are doing that, and if that's true, and if they're manifesting it, it is phenomenal. It's done more than all of the organic industry has done, and I was involved in the start of it here. So I think that they're getting it, and it's the only way they're going to be, from an energy standpoint too, it's the only way we're going to be able to continue to produce on scale.
Congratulations. We have room for one more question. Yes.
Yeah, just for speaking, and I appreciate what you said that profit is not the goal for the byproduct for the business, but just a rough estimate, if you don't mind, on the capital investment for that project.
The question is what the capital investment was for the project here in Vancouver. The city's been very helpful to us. We rent the facility, rent the space from them. The actual structures themselves in finished state would be about $1.5 million. And from that, we would produce roughly 190,000 pounds.
That was really fast. Let's go. So one more.
Aaron Cornell with Sky Harvest, and I have a quick two-part question. One for Herb. What was the biggest challenge for marketing local food to local consumers? And one to Stephen, and who is your target market in the city?
The biggest challenge to marketing the product is what Tara mentioned, that all of our infrastructure is how cheap can you get it, and people don't realize that North Americans pay less than 10% of disposable income on food, which is the lowest in the world, and they will buy an iPad or other things and complain about the price of a potato.
Our target market would be people who want very high quality food, very fresh, chemical free, picked consumed same or next day. And so there's a whole range of demographics that fits within that. And people who appreciate more what you've got will pay what it costs to produce it. Those that don't, well, then there's another issue. It's also important to know that with the city, part of our initiative there is to pay for some of our rent with foodstuffs or produce that would be used within their social network, which I think is important. So they're a customer too. What we're trying to produce is very high quality food without the chemicals, with lower environmental impact, with the less water use and proximity to market, so it's very, very fresh. That's our target customer.
Well, another round of applause for our 4 panelists.